बोलो না না আমার তো এটা বড় হয়ে যাবে ওটা দরকার হ্যালো শোনা যাচ্ছে স্যার শুক্র যাবে তো A very pleasant morning to our Honorable Secretary Bachupal sir, our Principal Dr. Audindam Khamrui sir, our IQAC Coordinator Sumanto Bera, and distinguished guests, learned scholars, and curious minds joining us from across the digital landscape. A heartfelt welcome to all. Myself, Krishnakanto Acharya, Assistant Professor, Coalfield College of Education. They say that if you speak to a man in a language he understands, it goes to his head. But if you speak to him in his language, it goes to his heart. Today, we gather to explore a language that for millions in India has traveled the long journey from the head to the heart. We are here to deliberate on the role of English as a second language in modern India, a topic that is not just about syntax or grammar, but about our shared history and our effective future. Now, it's my humble request to our principal sir to create a stronger hook through his speech at the beginning. Please, sir, come on, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Today's seminar opened with a look at English as a second language in modern India, a topic that sits at the crossroads of history, education, and globalization. From its colonial roots to its present role as a linked language, English has shaped India's academic, professional, and digital spaces. It offers access to global knowledge and opportunities, while also raising important questions about identity, equity, and linguistic diversity. In a nation of many languages, English functions not as a replacement, but as a bridge connecting regions, cultures, and ideas. In a geographically diverse nations like India, English plays a significant role in education, professional life, and global communication, while coexisting with numerous regional languages. Understanding its use and impact is essential for inclusive and effective learning. In this significant topic, we are honored to have two eminent resource persons with us today, Dr. Poulomi Guho Biswas and Dr. Tusnim Gangobadhyay. Both are from Khandra College, Department of English. Welcome, madam, and welcome, sir. Their scholarly expertise and insights will greatly enrich our understanding and discussion. I wish all participants and a meaningful and entirely academic experience and mobility in contemporary India. Thank you very much, and welcome, madam, and welcome, sir. And welcome our students also. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. It's called a beginning. In the vibrant, polyphonic tapestry of India, where dialects change every few kilometers, English has emerged as a linguistic Silk Route. It is no longer a colonial relic, it is a contemporary catalyst. It functions as the link language that allows a scientist in Bengaluru to collaborate with a poet in Kolkata and a student in Delhi to speak to the world. To navigate these complex waters of socio-linguistic and pedagogy, we are joined by two beacons of academic excellence. I, Krishnakanto Acharya, is really my distinct honor to introduce Dr. Paulami Guho Vishwas, Assistant Professor of English, Khandra College, Paschim Bardhaman. Dr. Vishwas is not merely an academic, she is cartographer of the literary world. Her work brilliantly maps the intersections of culture, society, and the evolving English tongue. We look forward to her insight on how English continues to shape our modern society or identity. Please, ma'am, come on, ma'am. Now, the whole stage and everything yours. Please, ma'am, come on.
Thank you so much, sir. I hope I am audible and visible.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
All right. Thank you, sir. First and foremost, good morning to each one of the students, the organizing team, and the teachers who are present here. A warm welcome to everyone. I am Dr. Polumi Govishas, Department of English, Khandra College, and I would like to express my gratitude to the organizing team for inviting me to this lecture, to this opportunity through which I can interact with your students. I wish that this was a offline event where I could have met them. I think I had also expressed this the last time. However, it had to be done in the hybrid mode. Special thanks to our esteemed principal, sir. Kamre, sir, thank you for inviting me once again. It's a pleasure to take this session. And also to the coordinator, IQAC coordinator, Bera, sir, thank you very much for inviting me. And also, sir, to introduce me to this event. For today's session, I think I can perhaps what is happening is I could hear the echo of my own speech, and I was wondering where this is coming from. And it's also very interesting because I'm thinking that I'm going to take this lecture in English, and I hope students are also able to understand in the because we all come from multicultural and multilingual backgrounds, right? So before I begin today's session, I would like to perhaps share a PPT. I must also inform the students well ahead that though what has been foregrounded for this lecture has been also the history of English language, also the way English has been a socio-cultural aspect to look at into it. But I also kind of shaped today's lecture based on the social linguistic aspect of English being a language in India. So I hope through this we will be able to go through the whole session and learn something. And also, I thought I could look into the idea of us teachers teaching English in our classrooms, where we do know that maybe more than half of the students are not well acquainted with the language itself. It also speaks about perhaps the fear that we may feel. And through the lecture, we'll also talk about Bourdieu's idea of linguistic capital, how the idea of knowing the language also provides us with the mobility and such. I will now like to share my screen. Just give me a minute. Is this visible to everyone? So, ma'am, if
Yes,
someone could.
ma'am.
Yes, okay. Thank you so much. I also want to know if, just a second, if this is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I'm also going to move through a few slides. Just let me know if it is moving because at times what happens that I am moving the slides, but it doesn't show. And if you can notice from this particular slide itself, I'm going to look into the role of English as a second language in modern India. However, I'm going to perhaps look at it from the social linguistic and pedagogical perspective. I'm pretty sure Tushnim sir later on will also talk about and add on to this. So please look forward to both these sessions. Now, is this screen visible? Just let me know because I've moved on. Okay, fine. Thank you, Preeti. I can see the thumbs up. All right. So when we are looking at it, right, we are looking at English language. We need to perhaps at some point rethink the idea that why ESL in India? Sir just mentioned one very important part that maybe it becomes a language that links us, the language that helps maybe a scientist from Bangalore to connect with a poet from, Kolkata, or perhaps a student here who is communicating with a professor in USA. And English as such becomes a language that connects us. In the introduction, you also heard about the idea itself that we have almost 1300 plus languages and dialects that we have. And at some point, we see perhaps English not just as a language, as an academic language, but also as a language that has its own skills, perhaps, right? So, for a long time, perhaps we have been discussing teaching English also in as a second language in India from the point of view of maybe grammar, fluency, examination, performance. Let me ask this simple question. How many of you fear the idea of an English exam? Or perhaps going through a lecture that is completely in English, that is given to you completely in English? Can I have some responses, or are we all very comfortable and we feel that we are very.
I'm comfortable
Uh,
in English.
Sorry, Ajal?
I'm comfortable in English.
Great, great. That's great to know. And at some point, perhaps we also have reached the point where we are looking at the language itself as something that is not just as a skill, but also a way for us to communicate in classrooms, Indian classrooms, especially where we have diverse languages. And you at such we perhaps understand that English then is not just a neutral skill or a neutral language, but that it carries a lot of baggage with it, right? There is the baggage of the colonial times when English was used as a language for administrative purposes. Or if you think about it, later on, post independence, we decided to retain the English language because, one, it was the easy way to carry out administrative tasks. It opened up various avenues for Indians who could speak in English. And if you think about it, the simple fact that we have so many Indian languages, there was one language perhaps that can be centralized in a way. So we do get it that English doesn't just carry the skill aspect of it, it has history, it has hierarchy, as well as hope, if you think about it in this particular current timeline, if you think. Now, this lecture then will not just look at English just as a language, but also as a socio-linguistic aspect regarding it. Now, in India, it works as opportunity as well as obstacle. When we step into our roads, right, you might see signboards, and most of them are written in English. If you go to different parts of the country, you will see that they are written in English along with the regional script, written in the regional script. So at some point, English is everywhere around us. It's a way to link, a way to connect. It is linked as such with the idea that who has, or rather, who possesses linguistic capital, who knows English, and who can take it forward. And at some point, our question perhaps should be that, okay, in English classrooms, in classrooms that we go to, we do speak in English. But however, and we do take the language into these classrooms. However, does it also produce perhaps social inequality? Who is able to assess or access this kind of language in the classrooms as well? Ria, I think you have raised your hand. Okay. And as such, at this point, maybe we need to question that what is then the perhaps the role of the teacher when we are in these classrooms, and whether the teacher plays a crucial role in mitigating all these aspects that we see. So language, English specifically, is connected to power, it is connected to access, it is also connected to the aspiration of millions of us who are living here, who are planning our higher education perhaps, who are planning to perhaps engage in English in their businesses and such. All right. Moving on to the idea that I want to talk about today. This is to look at English through a socio-linguistic lens, right? Now, in India, English is not a foreign language. It has been what Annamalai says, indigenized. You might have also heard of the term chutneyfication. It was a term given by Salman Rushdie, who spoke about the fact that we don't just take English, we make it Indian. We have also institutionalized it. We have used it in the vocabulary of our usual conversation. It can be a conversation with our friends and such. For the longest time, perhaps when I was a kid, I would think load shedding is a Bengali term. Amra Bangla eta boli load shedding hoyeche. অনেক বড় হলাম যখন বুঝতে পারলাম that okay, it means load shedding, and that it is actually an English term that is used in our everyday vocabulary. This was also the time when electricity power cuts would happen quite often. And I was living in Kolkata at that point, and this is what would happen. And I would run around and tell my dida that, you know what, load shedding hoyeche, and etc. etc. Anyhow, what we are going to look at perhaps is that how the meaning of anything that we take in terms of the language in itself is shaped by context, it's shaped by class, it is shaped by identity. I think one aspect that was spoken about in the introduction was also how we look at the language from the perspective of shaping who we are in this modern India, right? A lot of conversation can be seen also from the point of view that think about it from the point of view of NEP 2020. It has been said that if we talk about it, NEP 2020 focuses on multilingualism, it looks at mother tongue based education, it tries to look at flexible language learning. However, does it mean that English has been relegated to a secondary or a tertiary position? Not at all. At the same time, if you think about it, since we were talking about representation, giving it context, class, and identity, we can talk about Ambedkar's idea itself, that how he advocated English for political awareness, for social emancipation. And as such, even if you look at Dalit writers who are writing at this current point in history, they're also looking at language as a form of testimony, that let us use language as a form of testimony. It also looks at the idea that the stories that are being told are told from the idea of a counter narrative that has been given to the dominant culture. We do see all of this. We also understand the way then language is shaped, how English is shaped, and how it is given then, or rather shaped through the context, class, and identity. However, what you might also notice would be that how English, when we look at it in India, is very much everywhere. It's present in the WhatsApp text that you share. It's present academically through even this particular lecture and this PPT that you are looking at. It is present through the Netflix shows that you're watching, the YouTube content that you're watching perhaps. However, we also know that it is unevenly accessible. And maybe at this point, the question is that when we look at it, are we able to distinguish between exposure and access? So, while English surrounds learners everywhere, not all the learners are empowered to use it confidently or legitimately. I think this is something even Tushnim sir will talk about at a later point when we will look into the simple aspect that we have scholars, we have students in our college, and we end up taking English communication sessions, and we understand how little the participants might be able to understand when we are given them a simple instruction. And we had to change the instruction not just in English, we had to code switch, we had to write it in Hindi, we had to write it in Bengali. If I take a content into my classroom, I am always code switching. I'm always trying to ensure that the context and the content reaches the students, right? So I am teaching them about English literature. I am talking to them about 20th century poetry, prose, and drama. However, at some point or the other, I'm trying to code switch and try to speak, or rather try to explain the idea in Bengali or in Hindi, so that students in my classroom do understand that it's the idea that we are trying to take. Language will help us make it better. But however, are we able to assess, how we able to preserve the idea that has been spoken of, right? So what we do see that maybe two students are studying the same syllabus, they are being taught by the same teacher, they are being given the same material content and everything. However, you will see that their relationship with English might not be on equal terms. So exposure doesn't always lead to participation, even when we look at ESL through the linguistic lens, right? Now, let's look at the fact that what we were speaking about, that ESL versus EFL, right? So it's not a foreign language anymore. Theoreticians, academic thinkers, Indian scholars, they have all spoken about the fact that how then English is not a foreign language in India anymore. It is used in education, in administration, it's used in media. However, as I was just mentioning, that there is an unequal distribution. At some point, it becomes one of the best ways to engage, perhaps. And I will take you back into a few decades back when we would go onto this forum known as Orkut, and this is way before Facebook and Instagram, Snapchat, and all of it. And the way we would communicate would be to communicate to anyone all over the world. However, the language of that communication was English. So even if you would notice you're talking to someone, in Spain, you do not know Spanish, they perhaps don't know Bengali. And the only way that they could communicate was through English. And English then not just became the language that can help us in administration, but also a way to maybe connect, a way to make maybe, being friends across the world. As such, we notice that learners do encounter English differently. I have noticed a lot of my students also find it difficult when, okay, maybe this argument itself is wrong. It's not just difficult, but the idea that how when they enter an English classroom, they expect that the class would be taken in their mother tongue automatically. If I go to a classroom and I'm speaking in English, I would notice a lot of faces, a lot of confused faces, and it becomes a dilemma at that point to make them understand the language, the literature, and also to mitigate this distance that is there between comprehension and understanding and what has been taken in, right, by the session. So when we look at the Indian context, there is definitely, this aspect, this idea, or the division that we see, divisiveness that we see also maybe in terms of how we look at English language teaching against perhaps English that is spoken, that is written, that is just used across in India. So it's not foreign anymore, it is part of everything we do. It also helps us get the social mobility that we were talking about, right? So when Pierre Bourdieu spoke about the idea of the linguistic capital, that is what he meant, that a person, we have the idea that a person who speaks in English already knows a lot. That is, again, quote unquote, idea that we might have noticed. And maybe that is something that we need to address at some point. And this brings us to this question itself, that English and the linguistic hierarchies. Yesterday, during a conversation again, with Tushram sir, we were just discussing this idea itself, and we were talking about the fact that how you look at the idea that English is at the top of the language hierarchy. Maybe at some point we need to also address the fact that how it does provide us with the social mobility. However, it also can we, or rather, not that it does it, but can we disregard the multilingual aspect that we also bring into the quotient, right? Now, socio-linguistically, if you think about it, English occupies as such the highest position in India's linguistic hierarchy. It does so because it dominates the prestigious spaces. So think about it in terms of higher education, in terms of administration, in terms of professional spaces. We end up seeing that Indian languages are obviously relegated. Rather, often we see that those Indian languages are seen to be informal. They are seen to be present only in domestic spheres, in these corners of offices where friends come together or colleagues come together and they speak. However, the rest of it, the higher education aspect, the professional space, the higher education space, administration space, all of it sees English to hold on to that linguistically dominant position. Now, this hierarchy also leads to a dangerous assumption that anyone who can fluently speak in English is seen to be quote unquote intelligent. That any kind of accent that you say, if you hear a British accent or an American accent, there is the idea that, okay, this person, and again, I have also seen different rhetorics on social media where a lot of people, a lot of Indians are called out if they are using a certain accent as well. However, a lot, if it is a bit accented or there is hesitancy in speaking the language, we automatically perhaps assume that there is incompetence. Now, these assumptions, and now again, I will bring this back to a classroom. What ends up happening? The moment we push regional languages to low status domains, to private spheres, away, or rather domestic spheres, we are also trying to perhaps create the assumption that speaking in our language, our mother tongues, is not something that can lead you to any form of mobility. It also perhaps affect learners from, particularly if you think about it, from rural or marginalized backgrounds. This is also something that you must have noticed, that a lot of what we learn, how to say a particular word or such, is through reading. So I always find it fascinating when a learner is pronouncing a certain English word a certain way. It also speaks of their intelligence, because this learner has decided that they are going to learn by reading. And as such, their intelligence cannot just be connected with their proficiency in English. Rather, it should be in their the aspect in which they are able to comprehend, the aspect in which they are able to learn the particular language as well, right? We often, without realizing it, perhaps equate then fluent English with intelligence, and hesitant English with weakness. Perhaps at that point, we need to look at the aspect of the multi linguistic aspect that we provide into this conversation, right? Most learners, if you think about it, are multilingual. Let me just ask a simple question. How many students here know at least, so you do know English, you are being taught in English, but how many other languages do you know? Do you know, as such, two languages? If you do, raise your hand. How many of you know two languages? Just raise your hand. So it can be your mother tongue and one more language. Are there students who know more than two languages? Maybe instead of raising your hand, you can just, put a thumbs up emoji. How many of you know more than two languages? Great. How many of you know more than three languages? How many of you know more than four languages? Do we have someone here who knows five languages, perhaps? Okay. However, what you do notice that most of us are multilingual learners. We are taught in English in our classrooms. We have our mother tongue. We are also socially interacting. So, in a classroom that I go to, I am speaking in English, I'm speaking in Hindi, I'm speaking in Bengali. I am trying to code switch throughout this whole session, right? Now, contrary to deficit narratives that we see, Indian learners are at no point linguistically poor. Rather, we are extremely linguistically rich. Most students, and this must be on a daily basis, navigate in multiple languages. So, what you are speaking at home, what you are speaking outside the home, what you are speaking with your peers, with your teachers, with maybe the bus conductor that you take, all of it is an amalgamation. You are speaking and you are code switching, you are code mixing throughout. They speak in, and this becomes the point that they speak in one language, they think in one language, they also, move on to another language as well. Someone has also spoken about the fact that can I code switch during the session? I can, however, will it also help all these students understand? That becomes the point here. Also, when you are writing the comments in this bar, I'm not able to read it completely since I'm on this PPT page as well. So I will address that as well. So what is code switching? Can anyone explain that?
May
What
I,
would
ma'am?
code switching mean? Yes, Preeti, please go ahead. I think you wrote the comment, right? I
Yeah,
couldn't
I
read it
wrote,
completely.
and it's
Yeah.
about like code switching is when we use more than two languages simultaneously within a sentence.
Within a sentence, it can
It's
also
code
be
mixing
the
and
way
code
to,
switching.
yeah.
I'll think over it, ma'am.
Right. Completely fine. So even the simple fact कि আমি এই স্লাইডটা ইংলিশে লিখেছি বানিয়েছি, আমি এতদের ইংলিশে বুঝিয়েছি, বাট আমি এখন বাংলায় বোঝাচ্ছি। इसका मतलब ये भी हो सकता है कि जो मैं लिख रही हूँ, जो मैं बोल रही हूँ, क्या आप वो समझ पा रहे हैं? क्या मैं अगर हिंदी में बात करूँ अभी, आपको समझ आता है? तो हम यही बता रहे हैं कि इंग्लिश का इम्पोर्टेंस क्या हुआ, राइट? इंग्लिश हम लोग कैसे यूज कर रहे हैं, कैसे हम एज टीचर्स जो फ्यूचर में टीचर्स बनेंगे, हम लोग भी क्लासरूम को ऐसे एंगेज कर पाए, राइट? Okay, now coming back to it, we perhaps at some point forget that maybe practices of code switching or code mixing, they are not really signs of confusion. Rather, they are signs of linguistic intelligence. So, can we, in terms of ESL pedagogy that we might be taking into classrooms, look at them and not treat them as errors? Because at some point or the other, they show our linguistic competence, right? Once we perhaps understand this idea or the aspect of this pedagogy, maybe we can bring it into our classrooms as well. Students do not lack language. What they might lack would be, the space where languages are valued. Their languages are valued, and maybe here we can come back to NEP 2020 when they are talking about the simple fact that you can teach in the mother tongue, that you can be flexible in the language that you are taking per se. So the issue is not that the students don't know a particular language. It is perhaps a question of what is the only certain kind of English that is valued, right? Maybe you might have also thought about this or seen it in the classrooms that when you are asked a question, your friend, आपका दोस्त कोई बोल रहा होगा, अरे यार मुझे ये आंसर पता है पर मैं इंग्लिश में कैसे बोलूंगा? আমি আনসারটা বুঝতে পারছি, আমি জানি আনসারটা কি, কিন্তু ম্যামকে ইংলিশে কি করে বলবো? Or some of them are confident enough who think I do not need to care about the grammar, I know the content, let me just go ahead and answer it, right? Maybe this is the point where students understand that
Any problem, madam?
मैडम रिकनेक्ट करा चेष्टा করছি আমি।
There is some network issue or otherwise. Madam will connect shortly. All are requested to stay.
Hello, sir. I am here. I have connected with my phone. Just give me a second.
Okay, okay, it's okay. It's okay.
Kushnan, sir, I have a request for you. Is it possible for you to share your screen so I can share the PPT to you?
Yes. Wait. Let me speak. Yeah. Sure. 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 Sure.
Right?
Please
That
send me.
might.
Yeah. Send me the PPT. I'll share.
Yes, just give me. This reminds me of classes during the, COVID times when everything was connected. However, there would be these issues and discrepancies, and it won't fare well.
I think we are still in those days, speaking about network connectivity and issues.
It is, it is definitely the issue, right? Yeah. Um, Meanwhile, let me just go. Okay, okay. Let me just go ahead with what I was talking about. That we were looking at the practices, right? That when we look at multilingualism, linguism as a norm per se. So we perhaps the students also at some point look at the idea that there are no legitimized spaces where they can perhaps speak and practices like then code switching and code mixing can be seen as traditional ESL pedagogy that we can include. So can you move on to slide 7?
Tell me
Yeah.
when.
Yes, this one. Yeah. Thank you. So once we recognize multilingualism as the norm, right, and we have to then perhaps change the pedagogy, the ESL pedagogy, and then the goal of English teaching cannot just be about the linguistic replacement, but also linguistic expansion. Maybe at some point our job then perhaps is not to erase the home languages but also to build bridges with them. English then should enter not necessarily just as a classroom, or rather we shouldn't just think of English to be a language that can be replaced, but rather that's an addition when we also look at other languages, right? If you think about it, it again moves on to, and so can you move on to the next one? Next slide. So if you think about it, what then becomes the ESL teacher's role? And as I said that at some point I decided that in today's session, I'll also look at the students here who would be becoming instructors into the future, and how can they also look at the teachers as a social linguistic agent when it comes to ESL. An ESL teacher as such is never then just a language instructor, right? Every comment, every correction, every response that we present also sends a message whose language matters. And though there is major democratization of the language in terms of knowledge, English, and the democratization of knowledge, that is, we see that it has been used in academic journals, scientific knowledge as such. But we also perhaps need to look into that how are how, or rather what role does the teacher also take in this particular scenario. Teachers either reinforce linguistic hierarchies or they dismantle them, right? So this makes ESL teaching also at some point not just a technical one, but there might be ethical repercussions that we are also looking at. So every time you are, correcting a student, you're also sending a message that you are welcome. You are, welcome to try. You should stay, or you can also present the thought as you should stay quiet until you are perfect, right? So we see both kinds, and that is a lot of power that perhaps a person can hold on to at given point. Now, so can we move on to the next one? Mm, yeah, just a second. Yes. Now, when we are looking at a social linguistically informed pedagogy that prioritizes communication over perfection, the fact that it values intelligibility over just imitation of a native accent, it allows learners to make mistakes without fear. And as such, this is the confidence perhaps that we need in our classrooms. So, what does a responsive ESL classroom look like? We are prioritizing grammar, communication, and such, but we are also looking at, can we prioritize meaning over perfect grammar? Can we look at communication over correctness? Can we look at confidence over conformity? Right? We see all these aspects. To ground these ideas, now let us also look at perhaps, uh, you know, um, a case study. So, can we move on to the next one? Yes. So this is just a classroom case study, and there is this background. This is also the case study of a student I taught, and Ravi is a pseudonym at this point. Now, this student did. At some point, I had to interact with this student. So, this student comes from a rural government school, and it also, just one second.
संस्थान कहाँ पे होता पता है? 12 से 12 से 22 मेरा एवरेज है कितना? कुछ दिन में 32 तक गया था, करना कर नीचे देखा हमने। हाँ 24 तक जा सकता है, रुक देखो।
I am extremely sorry. My internet connection is giving up on me today. But yes, I'm extremely sorry. Let me just continue. I am audible to everyone, right? Yes. Okay. Thank you, Preeti. Yeah. So when you look into this particular situation, right? This is a first generation learner. They speak in Marathi. They also have limited exposure in English, and they are studying, and you are able to connect with them. And their exposure per se to English is through textbooks, and when they read up on in English in the form of examination questions and such, right? Let's go to the next slide. What we noticed at that point was that the student was hesitant to speak in English. When we would go and teach him, he would pretend to do, rather, he would pretend to not pay any attention. He would start talking to his classmate. When we looked into his answer books, we noticed that there were grammatical errors, and as such, it's very easy to label him as a student who is weak in English. We looked into his report cards, and we saw that most of them said he is weak in English, that he has to work on his grammar, his spellings, etc. However, what we tried to do at that point, we started teaching him in, another language. We started teaching him bilingually. And that ended up bringing a better result in terms of how he was able to understand what was being taught to him. So, in terms of the language, it took up not just in terms of English as something that was the mode of instruction, but also something that he was gradually over time able to grasp, and then you learn the skill to use it as well. Can we move on to the next one? So the understanding perhaps at some point was that the social linguistic reading of this would be that the silence was not always lack of intelligence. We also looked at that perhaps at some point or the other, fear of the language is what shaped how he responded in the classroom. And perhaps we need to also look at the fact that the classroom becomes a space where English tests not just the knowledge but self worth. And we see that social linguistically, we get to, or rather, the social linguistics helps us see the language learning, which is inseparable from identity. So, for English for Ravi has become a test of worth, not a tool for learning. So we do, or rather, we did understand that as such, English also, rather, silence became a mode of communication here. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Now, though this seminar is on the role of English in the modern India, how it's taught as a second language. However, perhaps we can look at certain pedagogical, interventions that we see in the classroom, and how can we work with them as such. What are we able to also see that if it also demonstrates that how pedagogy informed by social linguistic sensitivity can actually transform learning experience. When a teacher perhaps adopts bilingual explanations, we are allowing teacher peer discussions, we are using mixed languages, and maybe perhaps delay corrections, we help them participate a lot more. So in our classrooms also, when we have students who are not feeling that confident in English, we help them first form their ideas and then help them move on and use the language. And what we notice is that over the course of time, it's not just that the English language is, improved, but also we look at the idea that perhaps the confidence is also grows over time, right? So can we move on to the next part? We also see increased participation. We see confidence building. We also see that English doesn't just mean, seen as just as accessible per se. It's also seen more from the point of view of a language. And it's not just gatekeeping per se. Can we perhaps look at this language and we notice that it's not, the identity is preserved and not threatened. Now, in terms of that, English becomes an editive resource. Multilingualism then becomes a strength that we hold. Um, English in modern India is unavoidable, but it need not be oppressive per se. When we are also taught social linguistic awareness and pedagogical care, maybe when we look at English, it doesn't become a tool that is used for gatekeeping. Right? So I think with that, I'll end the session. Yeah, I am actually, I'm very extremely sorry because the network is not great at this point here. And I'm also not able to access the, chat here. So yeah, I'm not able to communicate that well. Yeah, but yeah, with that, I will end the session. Yes. Thank you, Dushram sir, for sharing the screen.
My pleasure.
Kamre sir,
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much.
so there is also a request since I think we also it was a delay from my end also. I have an examination invigilation duty in some time. I might have to take leave.
Ma'am, we are gathered. We have been gathered here in our actually multi-purpose room, and there are so many
Okay, sir.
students, and they all enjoy. Same, we all enjoy your lecture. It's a superb one.
Thank you, sir.
We will get a new vista, we can say.
I hope so. It can also help them because they are going to be future teachers. So at some point, I hope it becomes something that is useful for them. And after this, we also have Tushnim sir's session. So that will be extremely fruitful for the students as well.
Excuse me, ma'am. I have some particular questions.
Yes, sir.
It's a very, I think there's a much confusion about the pronunciation. Whenever we know the varieties, no, the Indian English, whenever some pronunciation, but suddenly some new pronunciation come and puzzle our students. And it is saying that the pronunciation is a British one. This pronunciation is the American one. So, what your suggestions, ma'am? Whenever we are telling about English is not a foreign language, it is our home language now, right now. How is it possible? How we can overcome this about the pronunciation? I think it is a problem.
So I feel at some point it's not even a question of overcoming something. The point becomes that it is a language through which we have to communicate. I have figured that if I am speaking to a Native American language, American person who speaks in American English per se, if I'm not able to bridge the gap of what I want to speak about and what I want, the content that I want to share, and they are not able to understand, then that is not effective communication. Maybe at some point, what ends up happening, I have to change my pronunciation so they can understand. At no point do I see them understanding what I'm trying to say and maybe gauge into what content I'm bringing. So even the same thing happens with British pronunciation as well. My friend who shifted from India to USA, when she speaks to her colleagues over there, she has to code switch or rather code mix into the accent that they use. Otherwise, they won't understand her. And more than understanding, maybe they also relegate her into a lower standard or space rather. Maybe she's not included in conversations in meetings, and maybe even if she is, maybe the the value that is given is not on the same level or at par with the others. So at that point, switching to that accent becomes important. However, I feel when we are talking amongst ourselves, there's no need to change. What are we trying to change? Again, as you said, it's Indian English right now. So our pronunciation, we try to maybe learn certain pronunciation. I think this is something I also tell my students quite often. Like when I was in school, I learned the word debt as debt. And I would use the B in a very profound and very pronounced manner. And it took me till college. I joined college, and then a friend told me that, listen, the B is silent. So that also perhaps helped when I am communicating with my peers who were also able to help me understand. But I don't think it's that big an issue till the time I'm able to express myself and make the other person understand what I'm trying to say. I think that should work.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sirs. Yes.
Yo, I'm so blessed. Yeah, I'm so blessed. So superbly you have discussed about the matter with suitable examples. Your own example is also. Thank you so much. I request the other students, my students and others. Do you have any questions? You can ask. Mine is
Yes,
here.
sir.
Yes.
Um, Good morning, sir.
Yes,
And
yes.
ma'am, I had a question.
Yes.
Like you said, you mentioned about delayed. The word was delayed. What strategy? Delayed correction strategy, right?
Right.
So, can you please elaborate on that?
Something as simple as this. Say, for example, you are communicating and you do notice that the student has either spoken, say, even if you look at the pronunciation aspect, right, that the student is not pronouncing the word the way it is supposed to be, or that the grammar is not correct. If we immediately stop them while they are speaking and we try to rectify them, at times what happens, they lose confidence, they don't want to continue with the line of thought that they had. Maybe we can wait for them to finish the thought, finish the idea, and then tell them that, okay, there are certain things that needs to be changed. So say, even in terms of the example I was giving in terms of debt, right? I spoke the word, I spoke whole idea about the whole sentence, the whole thought, the point that I wanted to make regarding debt, but I said all of it in the form of debt, and I used the word quite a few times. And once I was done with it, at a later point, my friend told me, listen, Polemy, that is not uh, depth. The B is silent. You have to speak in depth. My point is, at least it left such a lasting impression on me to know that my friend did not rebuke me. The person, on the other hand, did not just wait there to maybe look at just what was the mistake in there, right? So my point of delayed correction is not that you do not correct the mistakes. You do that. You have to do that. However, uh, you have to strategize how it works, what works best for the particular student. It also is context related, right? So that is what I meant, Preeti.
Yes, ma'am. And same goes with the reading session as well.
Reading session is another aspect. If you want them to develop the skill of reading and you want them to read it a certain way, you have to tell them that, see, this is being said a certain way. The pronunciation for it is a certain way. As I said, it's also context based, right? So when you become a teacher, you will have to understand the context in the classroom. Say if it is a skill of reading and you want them to read it in the manner it is to be, you have to correct them. At that point, is it just stopping them from forming their ideas? No, they're reading it as a skill, they're developing it as a skill. So at that point, you don't have to think of it in the delayed aspect, right?
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Preeti.
Is there anybody? Do you have any questions? Anybody? Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much.
All right, sir. I am. I also have to take the permission from all of you. I would need to lead the session as well. I have an invigilation duty in an hour. It was wonderful to meet everyone today and to have this session. Thank you once again for inviting me over, and thank you, sir. Yeah. Thank you, Arundam, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome, madam. Welcome.
Okay, sir. I'll leave the session right now. Thank you.
Okay. It's okay. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, the next session. To appreciate where we stand, we must acknowledge the journey. We have to go to the near past. From the administrative corridor of the 19th century, to the Silicon Valley of 21st. English in India has undergone a profound metamorphosis. It has evolved from a language of authority to a language of aspiration. Post independence, we didn't just inherit English, we reclaimed and reinvented it, making it a vital tool for national indications and intellectual sovereignty. As we begin, I invite you all to look at English today not as a foreign tongue, but as a shared vessel for Indian innovations and expressions. Let this session be a dialogue of minds and a celebration of our linguistic versatilities. Now, I am so honored to call the next keynote speaker. He is none but Assistant Professor Tasneem Gangopadhyay, Professor of English, Khanda College, Paschim Bardhaman, a veteran of the field. Professor Gangopadhyay's expertise in pedagogy and language evolutions offer a masterclass to how English serves as a vehicle for social mobility. His perspective promises to challenge our preconceptions and broaden our horizons. Sir, welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome,
I
sir.
thank
Welcome.
I thank the honorable principal, the IQAC coordinator, and all our dear hosts. Thank you for having me here. I remember last time we were here, we had a really lively dialogue with both the teachers and the students. I hope to have the same this time as well. So once again, thank you. Now, about my presentation, I am going to do it verbally from my phone because my laptop has been giving me a lot of trouble these days, which is also why I did not prepare a presentation. Uh, what I do have here is actually a rant because this is a topic about which I have a lot of thoughts. So I took some time and arranged my thoughts in an order. And I just want to have a conversation with everyone present over here on the topic and share my thoughts and listen to what everyone else has to say as well. So to begin with, you know, pondering upon the topic of second language. So when we say second language, that implies, okay, am I audible to everyone? I hope I'm audible, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, thank goodness. So when we say that English is a second language or whatever the second language there might be, that implies the existence of a first language. Now, what exactly is the hierarchy of these languages in our consciousness? Is the first language the most important language that we have, and the second language is a trade language? Or is it the first language that we have is the first language that we learned, and then we learn another language, and that is the second language, and then we learn another language? But that can get jumbled easily because here in India, we live in a multilingual society. So a lot of us, I think the most of us, grow up acquiring more than one languages. In that sense, maybe it is our mother tongue that is the first language, and whatever other languages we might acquire or learn in the process becomes third, second, third, fourth, and so on and so forth. Now, I would like to first share a couple of experiences from my own life, which which triggered this rad. And like Dr. Guha Viswas mentioned during her presentation, we have had a lot of conversations about this topic, and it's all usually ties down to the same thing. Back when I was in America teaching in Indiana University, so I was teaching Bengali and Indian culture, Bengali culture, Indian culture over there. So one day, my students asked me, what is the academic, status of Bengali in West Bengal right now? Why are the students learning Bengali? How are they using it? So, in order to answer them, I went online and I looked up a lot of news articles, some interviews on YouTube and other news channels, trying to figure out, okay, so if students in America want to learn Bengali as a second language, it makes a lot of sense that they would want to know how native Bengali students are learning Bengali. What shocked me at the time, and I'm talking about 2018, so what shocked me at the time was the fact that a lot of the interviews were with school students, college students, but most of them were with school students. And these students, they could not speak Bengali properly, like in a professional setting, in an academic setting. আমি যখন বাংলা বলবো তখন আমার উচ্চারণে একটা মার্জিত ভাব থাকবে, আমার গলার একটা ওজন থাকবে। अगर हम हिंदी में भी बात कर रहे हैं तो जो शब्द हम चयन करेंगे, जैसे हम अपने वाक्य को गठन करेंगे, तो all of these things they have a particular standard to them, a different register as we call them, register, sociolect, whatever you want to categorize it as. But these students, they could not use Bangla as such, and they would answer the interviewers that Bengali has no purpose in our lives. Bengali does not give you jobs. Bengali has no use in India or outside of India. So why should we be forced to learn Bengali? That is one experience that I had. Another experience that I keep having in our own college, and because a lot of my esteemed colleagues are here, so the experiences might be same with other language departments throughout different colleges, or they might be different. Uh, Whenever we ask our students to, opt for Indian languages, the MIL paper, modern Indian languages, Bangla, Hindi, Urdu, um, some in some colleges, I think they offer Olchiki as well. So whenever we ask the students to opt for those as well for their communication purposes, they refuse to. जैसा नहीं सर हिंदी बहुत डिफिकल्ट है बांग्ला पारी ना सर English, on the other hand, is an easy option. But that makes me think, is English really the second language for students such as these? If their mother tongue is too difficult, is that not becoming the second language? Can we have the mics muted, please? Thank you. So, that was my initial thought that I wanted to share on the topic of second languages. Now, I will move on to the actual discussion. So, language. What exactly is language? Why is language so different from other subjects? Or is language at all different from other subjects? What and if students can respond in the chat, I would be really happy. What do you think humans would be if we did not have language? Is there anything that we humans do right now? Is there anything that we can do, continue doing, or do even better if we stop using language? If anyone has an answer, you can raise your hand. You can write in the chat. I will wait for a few seconds. Any observations? What will humanity become if we don't have a language, any language at all? No language. Any observations? Wait, let me check the in call messages. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay, I just got disconnected somehow. I don't know why. All right. I maybe I should keep my
Yes, sir.
camera off in order to reduce the stress on the internet connection. Okay, this is exactly what Dr. Guha Biswas was talking about during the COVID times, and it has not changed. It has been 6 years since then, and our internet problems remain as before. Anyway, okay. So my last question to the audience was, what would humanity become without languages? The fact is, without languages, there would be no humanity. One of the most esteemed authors in English literature, Sir Terry Pratchett, once wrote in his book called Hogfather, mm, the sun, okay, so I'll give you some context. In this book, the Hogfather is actually Santa Claus, and death, the personification of death, saves Santa Claus from death. Now, someone asks death, what would have happened if you hadn't saved him? And the death says, the sun would not have risen. Now, this person who is talking to death asks, the sun would not have risen? Come on, you can't expect me to believe that. It is an astronomical fact. Death says, the sun would not have risen. So, this other person is now clearly confused. They ask, really, then what would have happened? Death says, a mere ball of flaming gas would have illuminated the world. And that exactly is what language is for human beings. If we did not have language, the world would continue performing as it does. The sun would keep rising, just that it would not be the sun. And what it does would not be rising, because all of these actions, all of these things are imprinted upon our consciousness, are reflected in our sea of consciousness only because we have language. We would be able to dream, maybe, but we would not be able to understand what it is that we dream. There would be nothing to communicate, and we wouldn't be able to communicate even if there were. With that said, is language then the same as any other subject that we study? Let us, for example, take something such as geography. Is language, English, Bengali, Hindi, whatever is it the same as geography? Because let us say nobody in this world studies geography anymore. Will the earth stop rotating? Will the sun stop its gravitational force? Will meteorological facts stop existing? Will there be no rain? Will there be no gravity? Will zoology and biology stop working if we stop studying them? No, they will continue just as they are continuing. The only thing that would happen is we will no longer understand why those things are happening. But language, on the other hand, the moment we stop using language, the moment we stop understanding or learning language, our lives will stop. We will not be able to access any of the facilities that we access in this entire society without the use of language. Even if we stop talking, if we write, if we text, that is language. If we stop texting and we gesture with our hands or our eyes or our face, that is sign language. Language, unlike the subjects that we study, unlike geography and political science and physics, chemistry, biology, zoology, language is a tool. Language is not a subject. It can be a subject when you're studying linguistics. It can be a subject when you're studying English literature, because then you're using the language to study the language. Or when you're studying literature, you're using the language to learn about history and culture and tradition and art and creativity and philosophy. But you're using the language to learn those things. You are not learning the language when you're learning either linguistics or literature. What language is, like I said, is a tool. It is like a hammer, for example. We have all seen hammers, we have all used hammers. Now, there are proper ways of using a hammer, there are improper ways of using a hammer. There are good ways of using it, there are bad ways of using it. And what Dr. Guha Biswas was talking about in the closing section of our presentation, that we often, when whatever it is that our second language is, it can be English, it can be French, it can be Spanish, Italian, a lot of the times we end up focusing on how it sounds to other people. We focus on whether or not our accent is British, or if we have an American accent, the way I'm pronouncing words. Am I supposed to say water? Am I supposed to say water like the British people do? Now, all of these things, they are performative. For example, you have a hammer and you want to use the hammer to hammer a nail to a piece of wood. But when we are focusing on how the language sounds to others, how whether or not we have a proper pronunciation, what we are doing is we are taking the hammer, we are holding it, and we are taking a selfie. So people can see that I'm using a hammer, but are you actually using the hammer? Even if you don't take a selfie, you can simply use the hammer to do what you're supposed to do. Performative, the whole performative aspect does not interfere with your ability to use the hammer. Now, let us say the way you are using the hammer is not very picturesque. No one is going to take a photo of you using a hammer and put it on Instagram. But as long as you use the hammer and the nail is in the wood, have you or have you not done your job? Has the tool served its purpose or has it not? What do people think? What do the students think? Which aspect of the language is more important? If the language is a hammer, is it more important that the picture of you using the hammer looks good, or is it important that you use the hammer to hammer a nail in the wood? I would say it's the latter, right? That is supposed to be what our relationship is to a language, to any language whatsoever. Even when talking about education and pedagogy, language is taught, like I said, in two different ways. For example, we teach language as a subject, especially even a second language, because most of the times, and again, as I was saying during the first few minutes of my own presentation, a lot of students, they usually think that their own mother tongue is too difficult. Now, here lies a dichotomy. Our mother tongue, be it Hindi, be it Bangla, be it Urdu, be it Maithili, whatever it is something that we assume people will know well. We assume that it is your mother tongue, you're supposed to know how to speak it, you're supposed to understand it, you're supposed to write and read it as well. Because that is a language that people typically acquire instead of learning. And these are typically the two ways in which anyone learns a language. Either they acquire it or they learn it. The language acquisition phase begins when a baby is inside its mother, and it does not quite end, but it becomes more difficult as the baby's age progresses. Around the age of 13 to 14, a person stops acquiring new languages. But that does not mean that they cannot learn the language. Whatever happens after that fact is learning. Acquiring and learning are two different things, but at the end of the day, they serve the same purpose. So when we talk about classroom education, there are two different aspects to it. Are we talking about school education or are we talking about college education? And even in school, are we talking about primary? Are we talking about secondary? Are we talking about higher secondary? Because if we look at the age group, by the age 13, 14, the language acquisition process usually stops. The language faculty in our brain becomes more rigid. So that would be around the time when students are in what class 8 or 9, maybe 13, 14. What do the students say? How old? Okay, why are you laughing? Hello, am I audible again? I don't understand what is happening.
Yes, sir, you are quite
Yes,
audible.
sir. You are fine.
Okay, okay. How much did you hear?
Yes, sir.
When did I get disconnected?
Or just a few seconds ago, sir.
Okay, thank goodness. Because see, what is happening is suddenly I'm getting a message that Gmail has stopped working and then it closes. And I have no idea if people could hear me before that or whatever. Okay. Okay. So this is really vexing the way this keeps happening. Hmm. So when we are talking about language learning, we have to remember what which group of students we are targeting. Are we talking about students who are in primary schools because they are still within the capacity of acquiring languages, and it's also during this phase of a student's life that more inductive methods should be used in order to teach them language, to help them not teach them language actually, to help them acquire the language that is surrounding them. But once the student reaches that critical age of 14 or 15 and they move on to high school or higher secondary school or even to college, then language becomes more of a medium of instruction as well as a subject to study. At that point, language is not a tool, not just a tool. Let's just say it's not just a tool, it's also a tool, but it's also a subject that you're studying and it's also a medium of instruction. How is it a subject that they study? It is a subject, as in, we have to teach the students how the linguistic elements of a language works. The idiolect, the sociolect, the different registers, the students usually pick up during their language acquisition phase. But when we are at a college level, we have to start shifting the focus on what the grammar of a language is, of what different applications of the language can be, of how writing, creative reading, critical reading, these skills can be polished and improved. And of course, it becomes a medium of instruction, which moves us to the point of the importance of English in the lives of Indian students. Why is English such an important second language? Like I said at the very beginning, and Dr. Guha Vishwas also said, we Indians typically we are not monolingual. We don't have one language. We are also not bilingual because most of us, if you are here in West Bengal, I am pretty sure you have picked up Hindi as well as Bengali at the very least, if not some other language as well. And these are the languages we all have acquired during our childhood. So we are already bi or trilingual. And on top of that, we need English because it is something that is taught in school, it is something that is taught in college, and it is treated as a second language, even though it might be the third or the fourth language that we actually learn. So, why is it that English has such an important position? Now, in order to understand that, we have to go back all the way back to the East India Company. Back in the day, the East India Company and, in fact, all European countries were trying to assimilate the entire world within their own colonial domain. And Britain, despite being a tiny country, had a huge amount of success somehow. So most countries in the world they had some British colonies, and English actually came to these countries as a trade language. Uh, I don't know if students of this generation would be familiar with it, but my esteemed colleagues will surely be familiar with, those old usage of English in Kolkata. Take, no take, akbar to see. Some of my colleagues must have read that or heard that. Whereas back in the day, when the British first came to India, English was a trade language, right? What exactly is a trade language? A trade language is a language whenever you go to somewhere to trade to do a business, you need to be able to communicate with them. You have something to sell, you want their money, they have money. In order to take their money, you have to give them some stuff. But how do you communicate that fact to the people with whom you want to interact? How would they bargain with you unless you have a common language? So, in order to create a common language, what usually happens is a pidgin language, PIDGIN, pidgin language is created. A pidgin language is when you take the grammatical structure of one language and take the vocabulary of the other language and you juxtapose them. So both people don't understand 100% of it, but both understand at least 50%. And in that way, you can communicate. So the take, no take, Akbar to see line that I just used, that was a line commonly used by traders in Kolkata during the British era. And if you look at it, the grammatical structure is taken from Bengali. Like for example, if you go to the market right now, hawkers will say যে নিলে নেবেন না নিলে না নেবেন একবার দেখুন তো দেখতে ক্ষতি কি আছে. That is something typically hawkers and shopkeepers will tell you. Now try to pigeonify this. Try to insert the English vocabulary into it. নিলে নেবেন টেক না নিলে না নেবেন নো টেক নো টেক একবার দেখুন so একবার তো see and there you have it. Is it something that makes perfect grammatical sense? No, it does not. But as a Bengali or as a Hindi speaker, do we understand what it means? Yes, we do. Did the Britishers understand? They obviously did. And which is why the Indian language, Indian English we have right now is its own entity. Every single instance of English is its own entity. The British colonies in America mixed with the Mexican, the Peruvian, the Incan, and the Native American population over there, and their 17th century English turned into what we now know as American English. The British English itself was influenced by all the different colonies and the people they took from these colonies to Europe. So the British English is now significantly different from American English. Indian English came out due to these pidginizations and later creolization of the language, which is why our English is again different from both British and American English. It's the same with African English, it is the same with Australian English, whatever English we have. And this is a small aside. I think one of my esteemed colleagues asked Dr. Guha Bishwas about the propriety of pronunciation. And here is my take. I did not, interject at the time, but I kept the point in mind. So when a lot of our students end up asking us, which pronunciation is correct? Is the Indian pronunciation correct? Is the British pronunciation correct? Is the American pronunciation correct? And the answer is none of them are correct or all of them are correct. There is no middle ground. You cannot say one is correct, the other is incorrect. As long as the etymology of the word is maintained, and as long as it does not violate the international phonetic alphabet spelling of the word. As long as these two things are not violated, or even if we leave the international phonetic alphabet, as long as the etymology of the word does not change, the meaning of the word will not change. And if the meaning of the word will not change, then however we pronounce the word makes sense within the language that we are speaking. This is an important point. If we are using a word which is specific to Indian English, for example, the word tiffin, we say tiffin time, we say tiffin cake, we say tiffin khete jacchi. Tiffin is an Indian word. It's an English word. It's an Indian word. It's an Indian English word. If you use this word in uh, Europe, they wouldn't understand. If you use this word in America, they wouldn't understand. Does that make this a wrong word? No, it's not. The word again is correct. So, which brings us back to the importance of English in India. So, the importance of English was installed in the minds of Indian population by the British people. They first used it as a trade language because they had to conduct their business with us. Secondly, once they established their colonies here, like Britain is a very small country. They cannot send people to govern India is a big country. If you need to govern India, you need to have officials in every single state, in every single city, every single village. The entirety of the entirety of Britain did not have enough population to govern the entirety of, let's say, Uttar Pradesh. So how would it be possible? What they decided was that we have to train the Indian people. We have to create a class of Indian people who will speak our language, but who are born in India. So their value system will be European, but their origins would be Indian. So whatever we say, they are going to follow. But because they are Indian, they look like Indian, they speak like Indians, the Indian people will not have a problem with them holding important government posts. So, in order to create that caste, in order to create that class, what did the Europeans, the British have to do? Teach them English, and not just English language. teach them English language and culture. So once this has been done for 200 years, not just in India, America, Africa, Australia, China, whatever country comes to your mind, it has in some way or the other been influenced by the English population and the English language and culture to this degree. What happens? Even though I, as an Indian, I do not speak Swahili, I do not speak Zulu, I do not speak Mandarin, I cannot go and communicate with people from these countries in their own languages, nor do they speak Bangla or Hindi. They speak English, and I speak English. So English becomes the lingua franca. It is a burden of our colonial era, but it is also a language that we have made our own. And that is exactly what happens during every revolution. When the Indian freedom fighters, they revolted against the British, did they invent a new kind of weapon with which to fight, or did they just take the guns and the bullets and the bombs from the British army and use it against the British? That is exactly what they did. It's the same with the language. That is where the post-colonial discourse comes through. The English language was put upon us as a burden and as a chain. We took that language, we made it our own, and now it is letting us communicate, it is letting us globalize, it is letting us create a network throughout the world. That is exactly why English is such an important language in India, despite not being of Indian origin. In fact, funny thing is, India right now has the greatest English speaking population in the entire world. But now comes the problem. According to certain surveys conducted globally during 2021 2022, it also turns out that the percentage of Indian population who can fluently use English is zero point 0.1. So out of 180 crore, I think our population is, someone correct me on that if I'm wrong, but if our population is 180 crore, 1% of that would be, sorry, was it 0.1? 1%. We had a 1% fluency. So 1% of that would be 1.8 crore, not even 2 crore. So how is that possible? How is it that every state board school, every central board school, every private school, as well as government school, every private college, government college, state college, central university, technical colleges, all of them have an English curriculum. They have communicative English, they have ability enhancement courses, they have spoken English courses, they have ESL courses. So with all of these, why is it that here in India, only 1.8 crore people can actually use English fluently? That is the biggest challenge, that is the biggest question that we educators and teachers, and because this is a B.Ed college, so all of the students here are hopefully going to become teachers and professors and lecturers later in their lives. So this is one question that is also going to affect you when you become a teacher. Why is it that despite us having such a vast English curriculum, despite us having English as a second language right from primary school, why is it that we lack fluency in English? And I'm not, when I say fluency in English, I do not mean fluency in American English. I do not mean fluency in British English. I mean fluency in Indian English, which, as I just discussed, is a very proper and correct form of English. Just because no American or British say the word tiffin does not mean that the word tiffin does not exist. It exists for us. Some of the reasons that I have personally, and like I said, this is my rant. So these are points that I have personally discovered throughout my almost 10 years of teaching and my with my during my student days as well. So these are certain elements that I have personally observed. Now, some of them might not match with how you have seen the academic world, and as such, please feel free to raise questions or challenge me on that. But what I have discovered is that a lot of the learners, the students, both in school and college, they possess a lot of passive knowledge. And that is something that our schools and colleges end up focusing on a lot. Passive knowledge is reading and some bit of writing. Now, here, let me introduce a new concept all of a sudden. Please raise your hand if you know what are the five C's of communication. If someone knows, please raise your hand. Or you can just unmute yourself and tell me. There are C, A, B, C, C for cat. So there are five C's of communication. Communication itself starts with a C. There are five other C's. Can someone tell me what they are? If anyone knows, please just unmute your mic and tell me. Even one or two. Or if not, I shall continue. So these five C's usually are clarity, conciseness, coherence, completeness, and courtesy. Okay, all of these start with a C, and these are all important elements of communication. Okay, clarity, as in whatever I'm saying or writing has to be clear. It should not be loopy. It should be concise. If I have to say one sentence, I'll say it. I'll say one sentence. I won't say an entire paragraph. Same with writing. Coherence. Coherence is, are my sentences structurally sound? Are they connected to each other logically? Completeness, whatever it is that I want to say or write, have I completed that thought? Courtesy, whom am I talking to or whom am I writing to? If I'm writing an application to the principal of my college, I am not going to start the application with, hey, buddy. That is not how it is done. And that's courtesy. But to this, there are two other C's that one of my teachers had once told me to add. And I thought it made a lot of sense. So I added those two C's as well. So we have five C's here. Two other C's makes it seven C's. What are those two other C's? One is culture and the other is community. Again, both start with C's. What do I mean when I say culture? Our language, like we were discussing, does not exist in a vacuum. A language is a tool used by human beings in order to communicate regarding whatever it is that they want to communicate. If you don't have anything to communicate, your language is dead. It's not working. Where is it that we communicate? When a society communicates with each other, culture is created. That is what is culture. We often say that cultural event, cultural program, and by that we mean song and music and dance. But that is those are cultural events. A culture is when a society which uses a same or a number of same languages, they come together and create certain behaviors, create certain rules, and create certain norms which are shared within that community. That is a culture. So every language has its own linguistic culture. Bengalis have their own Bengali culture. UPians have their own UP culture. And these cultures, without languages, they cannot exist. But without those cultures, the language will cease to work as well. And the next is community. You cannot have a culture without a community. If I go to moon tomorrow and I'm the single man on moon, I'm living there, will I have a culture? I won't have a community because I'm the single person living on moon. Will I have a culture? No, I cannot have a culture on my own. I need a community in order to do that. If I'm living alone without a community and without culture, do I need clarity? I'm not speaking to anyone. So I don't need clarity. I don't need conciseness, coherence, completeness, or courtesy. Because all of these things require there to be more than one person. And that is something that our classes do not focus on. When the students are reading, they are reading on their own. There is the book in front of them. They are reading. It is inside their head. They're trying to understand it inside their head. When they're writing, what do they write? What do we ask our students to write? We ask them to write notes, which is again a singular process. You write your notes. I write my notes. We ask them to write letters. That is something they write on them by themselves. We ask them to write essays, whatever it is. Again, it's a solitary activity. There is no sense of community in there. There is no sense of culture in there, which is what leads to a prohibition on the part of the students. They lack confidence because everything is inside their head. When they are reading it, it is inside their head. They are not joined by other people who are also reading it. If I'm reading it something like someone asked Dr. Guha Vishwas how to correct students when they are reading. Now, obviously, the teacher's role is to correct the students if they make a mistake. And this thing, because it is formative, it can be done immediately. But sometimes it can be inductive as well. If an entire community of students are reading and they're listening to each other read and they're free to communicate, they can learn from each other. They can have a peer learning session. They can correct each other as well without the teacher needing to step in. If there is a community and a culture where group writing is going on, in the process of writing, and if they're sharing the same language, that is an important part of it. If as long as they're sharing a common language, a student, any individual, background knowledge is going to be triggered. Their prior knowledge is going to be triggered. It is going to come out and it is going to impact the other students who are communicating with them. So, with the help of a community, as long as we have a language speaking community, which we have to create again, we must remember that we, all of us, we are here in rural or suburban India. We are not here in Bangalore, we are not here in Chennai or Delhi, where we already have a large population of foreigners or a large population of, people who are really fluent in English. What we have at our hands are students who come from maybe first or second generation learner backgrounds, people who have a lot of trouble, finding the confidence to use English. So we have to create that community for the students to interact with, and only through this interaction can they reach the seven C's of communication. In order to do that, what are the things that we can do? We can maybe stop overemphasizing grammars. And this is something I tell my students a lot that I don't, I think this was again something one of my teachers taught me. Just goes to show people teach you and then you teach those things to your students, it becomes a part of a tradition. So, one of my teachers, back when I was a student, once taught me the difference between language and grammar. He said that language is like riding a bike or driving a car, and grammars are like traffic rules. Now, if you think about it for a second, what is the difference between learning how to ride a bike and knowing the traffic rules? For example, if we are trying to learn how to ride a bike, we need to be able to keep our balance. We need to know how to start, how to brake, how not to let the bike go out of control, how not to crash into things, and so many other, physical motor functions, cognitive and motor functions. With traffic rules, they are completely different. Traffic rules are we have to stop at the red light, we have to go at the green light, we have to give an indicator when turning, we have to blow the horn when overtaking someone. So if we take one of our students and give them a bike, and we don't teach them how to ride the bike, we teach them what to do when the red light is on. We teach them what to do when the green light is on. Can the student ride the bike? No, the student will sit on the bike and fall down because we have not taught them that you have to insert the key and then start the bike. We have not taught them how to kick start. We have not taught them how to, quick start. On the other hand, if we have a student who already knows how to ride a bike but does not know the traffic rules, can that student ride the bike? The answer is yes. Most of the people out there on the road right now do not know the traffic rules and they are riding the bikes. That is why all these accidents happen. But the thing is, those people are riding bikes. They are getting out of their homes. They are going to the places that they need to go. Their work is getting done. The moment they learn the traffic rules, it's going to be perfect. It is exactly the same with language and grammar. In our schools, in our colleges, not colleges as such, mostly in our schools, the primary focus when teaching English is on grammars. What is the preposition? Where do we use the preposition? What is the transitive and intransitive? And after learning all of this, my students, what they have told me whenever I ask them that, okay, you have been studying English for maybe 10 years, 12 years. Why don't you speak it? They say, sir, we don't understand which verb to use with which noun and what preposition will go where. And that is what we end up doing. We create a fear in their mind. We tell them that your tenses have to be perfect, your conjugation has to be perfect. So as long as they are not perfect, these students are not going to speak. And as long as they don't speak, they are not going to be a part of the English speaking community. They are not going to be able to share their culture and absorb the culture. So that induction is not going to happen. And therefore, they are never going to learn English. English as a second language will only remain on their mark sheets. People will know that, okay, this person has learned English. Can this person speak English? No, sir. But he or she has learned English. This also brings to mind something the father of linguistics, Ferdinand Saussure, came up with, and how Noam Chomsky, I think some of our students here might be familiar with the name Noam Chomsky. So, how Noam Chomsky countered it. So, Ferdinand Saussure said that language capacity, has two parts. There is lang, which is your knowledge of a language, and parole, your ability to use the language. To that, Noam Chomsky said that no, that makes absolutely no sense. If you know about the language and if you are able to use the language, those two things are not connected. What you actually need is competence and performance. Competence is your knowledge of the language as well as your knowledge of how to use that language. That is an important part. Just knowing what a noun is and a verb is and how an sentence is created does not enable you to use the language. You also have to know how to use the language. So that is competence. And performance is when you put it to use. You know the language, you know how to use the language, you do it. So when you do that, you attain communicative competence. Now, communicative competence is something that we should be trying to instill into our students. But is instilling communicative competence of just English as a second language enough in our students? And this again brings me back to the earlier rant that I have while during the beginning of the presentation. Our students these days, and not just these days, this has been going on for decades now. Students take a lot of pride in not knowing their own mother tongue. They can speak it, they can read it to some extent. They cannot write Bengali properly, they cannot write Hindi properly. There have been so many instances when we ask a student to write an application in and they say they cannot write it in English. We say, okay, write it in your mother tongue. They cannot write it in their mother tongue. And these students are in higher education. They are in honors, they can be in masters, they can be doing their PhD for all you know. And they do not know a single language. And this is why I said that I had an issue with the whole, tier of language thing, first language, second language, third language. If someone cannot use any language, does it matter if they have a first language or a second language? You can't use the first language. So that's not your first language. That is, post-structuralism at its core. Something that is not inside of you is not a part of you. Jacques Derrida and all that. So what we need to actually create are students who have a sense of respect for what language is. And what is language is a tool. What does that tool do? That tool allows us to be a human being. It does not matter whether or not we are using it for job purposes. Of course, learning English is going to promote your professional growth outside of West Bengal. Even here in West Bengal, there are a lot of professions which need you to be at least bilingual. You need to know your mother tongue and English at the very least. If you step outside the state, then Bengali, for example, is not going to be all that useful. You need to learn the local language as well as English. If you go outside the country, you need to focus on English, even if you don't learn any other language. But that is not the only that is not the only purpose that your language serves. Your language makes you a human. Your language allows you to be a part of your community. And your community is important because without a community, you have no roots. No matter how well you try to integrate yourself into, let's say, a state like Maharashtra, You learn English really well as your second language. You move to Maharashtra, and even whether you learn Marathi or you simply rely on English, you are never going to become a Marathi person. Your culture is still a Bengali culture. Although you might enjoy the Marathi culture and you try to learn from it, that those are not your roots. And even if you believe those are your roots, the culture over there will, to some extent, dispel you. It will try to make you feel that, okay, you are not an inherent part of us. And this is even truer if you go to abroad these days. In Europe, a lot of negative sentiments regarding Southeast Asia has been garnering for quite a few years. America is purposefully banning the issuance of permanent visa, even student visa these days. And a lot of visas were suspended last year when Donald Trump became president again. So even if you move to a different country, that country is not going to accept you as you are as a part of its native culture. At the end of the day, your own culture is, I would recommend reading A House for Mr. Vishwas by V.S. Naipaul if students are interested in exploring how that feeling is. Anyway, so what we have to do is ensure that our students learn how to respect language for what it is. And the funny thing is, if someone respects one language and actually tries to understand how that language functions and how that language interacts with their own culture and community and their existence as a human being, they will gradually gain a similar degree of respect towards all other languages. So if someone refuses to acknowledge their mother tongue, chances are they are not going to go very far using English as a second language either, because all language at its core share these common traits that they are ultimately a tool. There are a lot of things that we can do in order to influence these things. We can, first of all, introduce our students to the different literary traditions that go around in the world, especially when we are talking about English as a second language. There is a lot of the times some of my students have asked me, why do they have to learn literature? And this goes especially for students who have not opted for English major. A lot of students from other different majors, they have either have English communication or they have English minor. What they want to learn is spoken English because they know that this is something they can use for English interviews, job interviews, public speaking, or whatever it is that they want to, even content creation. But what we end up teaching them is some Shakespeare, some William Wordsworth, some Chaucer, some, T.S. Eliot, and the students are very confused. The students ask us that, sir, are we going to need these poems later on in our lives? And I say, no, of course not. Of course not. After your exams are done, nobody is going to ask you to recite Sonnet 56 by Shakespeare for a job interview. No, that is not unless you are applying for the job of a literature professor. That is not something that is going to happen. So why do we study literature when we are trying to learn a language? Because literature again is a reflection of culture, and like I said, culture is a part of those seven C's. Unless you learn the culture, you will not, I mean, unless the students learn the culture, they will not be able to grasp the context of the language. A sentence in a vacuum does not make sense. A sentence makes sense or a word makes sense only in a given context, and that context is created by culture. Therefore, we try to instill a knowledge of different literary traditions in our students, although maybe we should do a better job of explaining why we are doing it to the students so they don't just assume that we are here to teach them few poems and a few stories and that is the end of it, that they're supposed to learn the language and the culture from those stories. Same goes for social history, philosophical thoughts, collective identity of us Indians as an English speaking nation, of other English speaking nations. All of these create a cultural heritage of oral traditions, folklore, written traditions, written histories. All of this coming together can create a sense of what a language is in the mind of students. Hopefully, if we can do that in a large enough you know, uh, cycle, maybe we can lead students to a point where they are fluent in their first, second, third, fourth, no matter how many languages they have. But until we do that, things don't look very bright to me. With that, I would like to conclude my presentation. Uh, I am sorry for all those, interruptions when my network went out. But please, any observations, any refutations, any questions, let's allow the discussion to happen now. Hello, am I audible?
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. Okay. My presentation, rant, whatever you want to call it, is at an end. I would now like to hear if the students or my esteemed colleagues have some questions, observations, or if they disagree with some of the things that I said.
Students who have any questions?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Do you have any queries? You can ask. Who have already joined? I ask everyone. It's a golden opportunity. You can't miss it. Do you have any questions, any queries? You can ask.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, I have a question for all the students who are participating here. What are, if some of those of you who are also studying English, maybe communicative English or in whatever capacity, spoken English, what are the problems you usually face when learning English as a second language? Those of the students who are studying or learning English, feel free to answer.
Please, students, as a second language, when you have been learning English till date, no? So what kind of problem you have been facing? They're asking you. In Bengali, you facing means means. अच्छा सेकेंड लैंग्वेज इंग्लिश है तो परफेक्ट है तो बोलना क्या चाहते हैं आप ना ना एज ए सेकेंड लैंग्वेज जब इंग्लिश अब हाँ क्या क्या प्रॉब्लम आप फेस करें ऐसे इंग्लिश सेकेंड लैंग्वेज जो सीखने में लर्निंग करने में वही सर पूछ रहे हैं कि आप कैसा प्रॉब्लम फेस कर रहे हैं या करते हैं पकड़ चुके हैं कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है आपको
Okay, that is the best case scenario. If nobody is facing any problem, then that means your English education is going first class. And
We
what more
are
can
not
we
only
expect,
this, sir,
right?
we are so grateful. We are so grateful to the students, not
Yes,
only.
that is very happy news. And I wish it goes on this well, throughout their academic careers.
একটা বিষয় আছে যে আমরা বুঝতে না পারলে আমাদের খুব প্রবলেম হয়
এটা স্যার একদমই সত্যি কথা যে প্রবলেমটা তখনই হয় যখন মানুষ বুঝতে পারে যে জিনিসটা আমি ধরুন বুঝলাম না আমার তাতে কোনো প্রবলেমও থাকে না আবার না আবার আবার এটাও বলবো যে খুব ভালো করে বুঝলে তখনও প্রবলেম থাকে না এটা আমি এমনি মজা করছি আচ্ছা, প্রচন্ড একো হচ্ছে। আরেকবার চেষ্টা করবেন, মানে কিছু শোনা গেল না।
অ্যাকচুয়ালি আমি বলতে চাইছি যে গ্রামের দিকের কলেজের স্টুডেন্টদের কাছে সেকেন্ড ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ ইংলিশটা সত্যি ডিফিকাল্ট, কারণ আমাদের মাদার ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ তো বেঙ্গলি। তো বেঙ্গলি থেকে আমরা ইংলিশে ট্রান্সলেট করতে বেশি পারি আর কি। তো সেই জন্য আমার বক্তব্য যে আমি যেটা বলছিলাম যে বুঝতে পারেনি বলে এদের কোনো সমস্যা নেই, এটা এটা হতে পারে। আর আপনি যেটা বলছেন যে অনেক বুঝে গেলে সমস্যা হয় না, সেটা সেটা কমই হয়। এটাই বলুন।
আমি দেখতেছি অডিওটা। ঠিক আছে স্যার, তাহলে আর যদি কোনো প্রশ্ন না থাকে সেক্ষেত্রে আমার প্রেজেন্টেশন আমি এখানেই সমাপ্ত করছি। প্রিন্সিপাল স্যারকে, আইপিএসসি কোঅর্ডিনেটর স্যারকে আমার অনেক অনেক ধন্যবাদ আবার আমাকে আমন্ত্রণ জানানোর জন্য। খুব ভালো লাগলো। আশা করছি এবার ফিজিক্যালি কোনোদিন আমরা আপনাদের কলেজে এসে স্টুডেন্টদের সঙ্গে কথা বলে যাবো। সেটা বলতে বললেন যেটা বললেন যে সামনাসামনি কথা বলতে সব থেকে ভালো লাগে, কিন্তু
আমরা স্যার এর আগেও আপনাকে পেয়েছি স্যার। হ্যাঁ, আশা করি এবার কিন্তু একেবারে সামনাসামনি হবে, অফলাইনে যেটা আপনি যেভাবে করলেন। আমার মনে হয় ব্যক্তিগতভাবে স্যার যে আপনি যেভাবে টোটাল মানে সেশনটা চালিয়েছেন বা আজকে, এটা মনে হয় অনেক বেশি ফুটফুট হতো যদি আপনাকে সামনে সবাই পেত। অনেক সময় হয় কি স্যার, ওই ইংলিশটা তো ইংলিশই সাবজেক্ট হয়ে রয়েছে স্যার, বিশেষ করে আমাদের বাংলা মাধ্যম বা হিন্দি মাধ্যম ছেলে মেয়েদের জন্য। হ্যাঁ, তো সেই জায়গাটা আমার মনে হয় একটু প্রয়োজন আছে স্যার, যে আপনার তখন মানুষ যদি সামনে এসে ওই জায়গাগুলো ওভারকাম করো, তো বাচ্চারা বোধহয় তাতে খুশি হতো। এই যে আপনি জিজ্ঞেস করবেন না কি অসুবিধা হচ্ছে, কেউ বলতেই পারছে না। অসুবিধা কি হয়নি, হয়েছে,
মানে
প্রচুর অসুবিধা হয়েছে।
চোখে চোখ রেখে সামনে দাঁড়িয়ে কথা বলার মধ্যে একটা মানে কি, ধরুন আমি কারো যদি মুখ দেখে বুঝতে পারছি যে সে কোন একটা জিনিস বুঝতে পারলো না, তাকে আমি একটু বোঝাবার চেষ্টা করব। অনলাইন মানে সত্যি
হয় না স্যার। আপনি ক্লাসরুম ম্যানেজমেন্টের কথা বলছেন, সেটা অনলাইনে কি করে শেখানো যায়? সেটা তো ক্লাসরুম ম্যানেজমেন্ট আপনি ক্লাসে এসে করবেন, প্ল্যাটফর্মে দাঁড়িয়ে করবেন, আপনাকে সামনাসামনি দেখবো আমরা। হ্যাঁ, তো যাই হোক স্যার, আমরা এতটাই কৃতজ্ঞ। প্রিন্সিপাল স্যার আমাকে কিছুক্ষণ আগে বলছিলেন যে আপনাদের এইভাবে পাওয়া একটা সৌভাগ্য না হলে তো হয় না। এটা তো টোটালি আপনাদের উপর নির্ভর করে, আপনাদের সময়ের উপরে, আপনাদের, আমি এভাবে বলতে চাইছি না, মানে ইচ্ছা বা সময় সুযোগ সবটাই তো। তো সেই জন্য স্যার অশেষ ধন্যবাদ। আশা করি একদম একদম স্যার
যে আপনারা ডাকছেন, এবং দেখুন এতজন স্টুডেন্টকে আমরা পাচ্ছি, তো তার মানে আগ্রহ রয়েছে। এটা একদমই
আগ্রহ আছে স্যার,
মানে
হ্যাঁ আগ্রহ আছে স্যার। আমাদের স্টুডেন্টরা কিন্তু বরাবরই স্যারের নেতৃত্বে কিন্তু মানে আমরা এই ব্যাপারে খুব উদ্যোগী, কিন্তু অনেক সময় যেন কোথায় যেন খেই হারায়। আর বোধ হয় এটার জন্য হয়তো কিছুটা হলেও হ্যাঁ, আজকে সেট আপটা স্যার একটু গন্ডগোল করেছে আমাদের এখানটায়। আমরা একটা ব্যবস্থা করেছিলাম স্ক্রিনের উপরে, সেখানে একটা গন্ডগোল হচ্ছিল স্যার। এটা আমাদেরও দোষ, একটা কোথাও ফল্ট হয়েছে।
দেখলেন মানে ইন্টারনেট বারবার চলে যাচ্ছে, আমারও ম্যাডামেরও